welcome, bienvenidos, buenas noches, buenas tardes, and welcome to Caldo de Risa. I'm your host, Danny Archilla. I'm here with Bryan TV and a special guest. She's my cousin from the East Coast. I am very happy to have her on the podcast today. We're going to be talking all sorts of wonderful things about Colombian culture and our families and how it's making a difference in the world today to be bilingual and all types of awesome. It's my cousin Catalina Garavito. How are you? How's it going?
Hi, Danny. I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really good, actually. Yeah, we're just hanging out here. Me and my co-host Bryan. He's about to join us in just a moment. Yep. There he is. He's walking on in.
Hey, how you doing?
Nice. Hello.
Sorry, we just had to make sure that everything was lined up all right.
That makes
Hi,
sense.
thank you
That's
so much for
very
taking the time to
professional.
meet with us.
Of course. This sounds like a lot of fun. I love the shirt. I should have worn my Colombian t-shirt.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, I'm going to kick it off just because I want us to get to it and I don't want to waste too much of your time.
It's already 9:30 over there, so we want to be respectful of your time. Thanks again.
Well, you also don't want to make it seem like she could be up at 9:30. She could be about to go to a rave.
It's a Tuesday.
You don't know your cousin, so she could be going to a rave on a Tuesday, bro. We're Colombian. That's the whole point of the show, bro.
Yeah.
Come on, man. All right, let's take this clean. You got this, right? Okay, let's do this.
Yeah, go for it.
No, take it clean. You got this.
Okay.
Here
You
go.
said
Nice
you
clean
wanted
one.
to-
I'm here now. I'm in it.
All right.
Here, I'm
Well,
in it. Go for it.
I guess really, my first question is, I mean, how have you been since you came back from the cruise? We did a big family reunion type of cruise.
So currently, what's happening right now is we're following the breadcrumbs of Danny's cruise. So Danny was
A
really
very
excited
crazy
about
cruise.
being on the cruise and like being so near so many people, and he was like, "Well, let's start interviewing my family members." So
Yeah.
we're starting to slowly. Most of the conversations start with him going, "So what did you think about that cruise?" So like
This is only the second conversation I've
yeah,
had.
but I'm starting to
It's not
sense a
enough to
trend.
draw
I'm starting to
pattern.
sense a trend. So if you
Yeah.
hear a lot of cruise-related questions, it's because Danny's still, fascinated. But I'm sorry. Go ahead, Danny. You got this.
Well, I guess I just wanted to ask, really, better yet, how was that for you personally, like being on that with our big family, our big extended family, while also like kind of just breathing in, I guess, just the old world and how like maybe there were traditions that passed over from Spain and these other countries, Italy, France, Tunisia, to Colombia. Like, I mean, how did that? How did you reflect about that?
So a lot to digest, but basically to give some context for people that don't know, we did a cruise for 7 days with over 40 something people.
Yeah.
Our
that's
closest
crazy.
in quotation
Let me
marks,
check the numbers.
our closest family. But yeah, I think it's been a lot. I'm not gonna lie. Like I love family, but then coming back, I had to decompress because
Yeah.
we-
Yeah, I mean it's natural to
Think she froze.
decompress.
You got froze. Are
I
you connected
froze.
to the Wi-Fi?
All right, I'm back.
Yeah, hey, hold on a second.
Give us 2 seconds. Let me just make sure that Danny's connected to the Wi-Fi.
Yeah,
I'm so sorry.
we want to get
Right
back
in the
into-
middle of her cruise story. You got to talk about the cruise and she didn't get a chance to.
No,
Fix
she
it-
did
fix
mention.
the Wi-Fi.
She
Give
did
me a second
mention.
real quick.
Yeah. So what we're gonna do,
Second.
we're gonna
You're
make sure
fine.
that the Wi-Fi connection's a little more prime.
Pause this.
Yeah.
We're gonna keep the audio running.
I want to say it could have been our Wi-Fi too,
Yeah, it could be yours.
You never blink.
but it works. We're good now.
Okay, so which one's your Wi-Fi connection again? Because I got like all sorts here, but he's just typing in his Bejeweled. Yeah, you have to play Bejeweled just to.
I'm playing Minesweeper.
Oh, dude, I remember Minesweeper. What are you talking about? I played Minesweeper all the time in that pinball game, the space pinball. Okay, that's even better.
How about that
Look at
one
that.
there?
Yeah.
You know, that's
Yeah.
all.
Oh,
It's called
perfect.
technology, Holmes. Did you learn about it on the cruise?
I know about technology. Of course I do. My dad's a huge nerd.
The snap, homie. All right.
Yeah.
I want you to restart the question for.
All right, cool. Yeah. All right.
And say Brian's
So
fixing.
yeah. So Brian just fixed what we did with our Wi-Fi. So hooray for Brian.
Yay.
I'm gonna re-ask that question, and feel free to give
Okay.
me the same answer as much as you want to. We're gonna get back into it. But yeah, how was it for you coming back from such a culture shock, such as like going onto a cruise, going to the European continent, hanging out with so many family members, and digesting all this culture to everyday life back there in America? Like, how was that for you?
For sure. Yeah, so definitely to give some context, for those that don't know, we did a cruise for 7 days with 40 of our, in quotation mark, closest of our family members. So it was a lot to digest, definitely living alone in Washington, D.C., and then going to meet 40 of our closest family members was a lot. And I think, I don't know, it's kind of interesting that you talk about cultural differences. I definitely see, like in Spain, how a little bit like where we came from, but it's also very different on how I was raised in Colombia, but that was years ago. That was over 20 years ago.
Right.
So I don't know. What are some cultural things that you thought? So maybe I can kind of speak on
I
that.
felt like, for one, Colombia and Spain in particular, they're very similar in the sense that people are just always out doing something, and they're always like interested in whatever feels the most relaxed and the most accommodating. Like ease. Like you're walking around the streets, you have like maybe a short and shirts on, but you're like working at your internet cafe, or you're about to go Roomba, you're about to go dance. It's hard to really tell that apart from like the country of Colombia from the country of Spain, which apparently, is the only other country besides Colombia that has the best Spanish. So it's like, I think that's another thing. We got a bit of our pride, our belief in like our people from like Spain, because they're super pompous. But I mean, I like that, but I like our pompousness better because I'm just used to it, So I think really just the attitude, we got a lot of that
flair.
Yeah, that flair.
Yeah,
that pizzazz.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I agree. I think Spain and Colombia does have a lot of. I feel like it's very community based. So it's like, hey, let's go party together. Let's work, and then after work, let's go to the bar and drink a beer. And you definitely see that. You see that a lot.
Yeah.
I think it's a European culture.
There was a bit of that. Yeah.
Which is funny because I think it's just very European. When I lived in London, the short period that I did, they actually had something very similar where they would go to the pub afterwards. So everyone that I worked with would be like, okay, let's go to the pub. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not used to this in the States. So it was like they were merging a lot of that community based in London as well. So I think it's very European.
You're like world traveled, right? Because like we've only met 2 of his family members, and
well, you met 3.
So
now.
hold on, here I gotta. Okay, so we got the first one out the way, right? So now we're getting, and this is gonna be part of everything, so don't worry about it. We're not gonna cut any of this out.
Yeah.
All right, we got the first one out of the way, right? It's like, okay, cool, now we know. But I wanted to do a couple format things as the producer of the Mamma Jamma. My bad. All right, let's start off with this.
Please do.
She's formally introduced herself yet?
Yes, yeah. I mean, if you want to introduce yourself really quickly, just so we have.
Yeah,
like,
I just want to make an understanding of where they are, where they're living at, who they are to you, and then carnival talk. So, would you like to introduce yourself first to the audience?
Now that we have like clear Wi-Fi and everything.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I also feel like because it's the first time that you get to know me, it's interesting for you to ask certain questions because I think.
We're gonna blow your mind with the questions.
I definitely have some questions about London.
Oh, Danny's so ready, bro. He takes these things so seriously. It's ridiculous.
I love
Damn, the
London
camera got
so
all
much,
askew and everything.
Yeah.
All right, I'm so sorry that we're gonna take this one more time. Oh, there you go, Danny. It might be her Wi-Fi.
That's what she was trying to state before. But I mean, the connection's really clear. If you could just like introduce yourself really quickly for the camera again before we get into our next question.
Where you live and I mean your occupation. I think that'd be cool too. I would like that as well. All right, so let me go make sure that comes through and then have her take it again.
Yeah, because he edits all of this together. So yeah.
Okay.
If you could, Catalina, really quickly.
Go. Yeah. So my name is Catalina Rodriguez, also Garavito. For some reason, Hispanics have a million last names. I chose to live in Washington, D.C., and I do digital marketing. I work for myself, so that means that I get subcontracted by different companies to do their digital marketing, mostly on social media and email marketing and affiliate marketing.
That's really good. My Bryan says that's sick, and I second with him, not only because like you also agree with how odd it is that we have 4 last names. I've never completely understood the logic behind that. Maybe we could talk about it for a bit, but yeah,
very cool.
I'm in marketing as well, and it's just like it's good to
runs in the family.
It runs in the family. We like business. That's one thing Colombians are always after. We're always after like making money, making business. You know, that's our game. But yeah, did you have a question for her? Really quick?
So I guess right off the bat, how was your life growing up as a Colombian? And what I mean by that is, the reason why Danny and I started personally the podcast is we're both fascinated with what it means to be Colombian. Danny grew up in a very, his family has accents. They have flags on them on the wall. There's I'm exaggerating, obviously, but what I'm saying is my mother was very whitewashed. I grew up in a redneck town in Virginia. My culture is very. I was the only white black person that as far as anyone's concerned, and I'm not even black. I'm just a Colombian. So it's like, that's how, how small of Colombia I understand.
Yeah.
So now, for me, my biggest question is like, what is it? How was your upbringing, and how does that affect you as a person? Did you grow up with the saints on the wall and with the Bible in the corner? Like my grandma used to have a Bible in the corner. Like, did you things like that? Were you born in Colombia? You were not born in Colombia. So that's kind of where I'm at.
So you were raised in Virginia, or you were born in Virginia?
I was born in Colombia, and then I came over here at 3 years old. And then I was
you were a baby.
raised in Virginia. Yeah.
Got it. So you're very American.
I knew many things as a baby, but I didn't know much about being Colombian. So it's like, I don't know what else, kind of what to do.
Okay. Yeah. So I want to say I was 9 years old when I moved from Colombia. We actually moved to Miami to begin with. So I want to say I had my foundation growing up in Colombia. It was very family oriented. Every single weekend we would be at someone's house celebrating someone's birthday. And it was like, they were like family, but I had no clue who they were. They would always be like, oh, I remember when you were younger.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
I have no idea.
Exactly.
But we're just here to party because that's what we do. We just need an excuse to gather around, and it doesn't matter who it is. You just go, and you have no choice. Like, you go.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to be rude.
That was always kind of the vibe. I remember that, just like, not even with our family alone, but just in general, like even with my mom's side of the family, you just kind of, as a kid, you're ushered around to going to all these like Sunday after mass parties, and it's a requirement to say hi. You have to kiss everybody on the cheek. You have to shake their hand. You have to ask how they're doing, and then you have to answer back. It's a whole to do. It almost felt like we were like royalty or something,
And you grew up in Florida, is that correct?
Well, no, I mean, she was born in Colombia, but she grew up a little bit in
born
Miami.
in Bogota.
No, I'm saying outside of Colombia.
Yeah, well, she moved to Miami first.
Yeah,
right?
outside of.
Is the majority of your family Miami-based that we're going to be calling? You ain't got no family out in Montana or nothing like that? Because, like, we can start getting into my white Colombian family. I don't know much about them.
What's very interesting, because you're in Virginia, right? So now that I'm in the DMV area, I totally understand this whole, like, I found it very segregated I found it either you were white, you were Spanish, or you were black.
There you
But there
go.
was no in between.
Yeah.
Versus growing up in Florida, and I talk about this all the time with my cousins down here. It's like everyone kind of just hangs out with each other, and it's kind of like I didn't see that segregation, but definitely living in DC, yeah, it was either like, okay, you're very whitewashed,
Yeah.
you're Hispanic and white, or you're Hispanic and like more in the black culture, and
Yeah.
like there was really no in between. So actually, living in DC was a huge culture shock going from Florida.
Yeah.
It's very different, very
Yeah,
different.
I completely understand. I mean, when I moved out here to California, probably like 6 or 7 years ago, I didn't know that there were anything other than Mexicans with that same mindset. And I started working with a bunch of
Yeah.
people, you know, and I'd be like, "Oh, so you're Mexican?" And be like, "No, man. Like, I'm. There's Salvies. There's, you know, there's people from every, you know, and listing down how many. And I'm so oblivious, so small.
Yeah, Salvadorians, Hondurans,
Wrap it a
sometimes
little bit.
Filipinos, you know, everybody. Yeah.
All of them. So it's like, yeah, it's very cool that someone else experiences that as well. And I think most of the family that we know. Were you born in Colombia? I keep
No,
forgetting.
I was born in California.
Oh, okay. How much
Yeah.
of your family is born here that's Colombian? I'm sorry, we're having producer notes.
I
Yeah.
feel like
Do you know? Actually, no.
I
She's
feel like
here.
she
This
should
is
answer
perfect.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
How much of your family do you think is born in Colombia versus how much? What a great question.
I
in the United
think
States.
the younger generation. So definitely, your sister or my brother was born in Miami.
Out of the 40
it's-
people that were on the cruise with you,
50.
Probably 7 or 8.
7 or 8 of them were born in the United States.
I think so. I can
Yeah.
only count you, your sister, my
Yeah.
brother. Obviously, the new babies,
Of course.
Tomás, Isabela. So it's very like I'm first generation coming from Colombia. So and I think anyone younger than me.
gotcha.
That kind of plays into what I was going to ask next. I always feel like awkward anyway around my family, and I especially feel most awkward when I'm in Colombia. But it was kind of nice being in Spain with the family from the day when we landed and we were hanging out to like the day after, to where we were actually you know, enjoying a bit of the town. And then of course when we came back and we just had a little bit of that time, we ate outside the Sagrada Familia. Me and I think I was there with Jorge and you know, just my family and all that. Well, I think what I'm trying to say is that Spanish people, like, you know, you would I think people think, oh, you know, Spanish people speaking the same language, it's easy for us to like get along and all that. But like with Spanish people, I felt like super awkward. So like, what were like some surprising things you came across when you were trying to like communicate with people, like not only in Europe but in Spain in particular, being that you are Colombian born, but maybe it's like also, again, like a big culture shock to be there, you know, speaking Spanish versus Colombia or in Florida.
Yeah. I definitely think that they can obviously tell just by our accent that we're not from there.
Yeah.
And I think maybe even some Colombians that have lived in Spain for some time, they've acquired some sort of accent to blend in, as we do. But yeah, to me it was very, anytime that I would go anywhere, they would know that I'm a tourist. They could probably hear a little bit of my Colombian accent.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's about it. I mean, more than anything, I enjoy it. I enjoy being a tourist. So yeah, that's what I got from it.
So, whoa, Maria. So I'm the guy who asks all the like kind of tough questions.
Yeah,
Yes,
please
that's
do.
questions
The
if I
questions
want
that
to.
Danny won't ask.
I'll ask tough questions.
And also, would you do me a favor? Could you tilt your laptop camera up a little bit so we can see your whole?
Yes.
It's not a very tough question at all.
All
That
right,
was
good.
easy.
I thought you had horns or something on the top of your head. No, I'm just kidding. She just,
I
like,
had
little
them.
horns.
I had them.
She had like a little unicorn. Come on, Danny, laugh, bro. It's your,
Ha, ha,
it's your
ha,
cousin
ha.
here,
Yeah,
bro.
yeah.
All right. So as a Colombian, you know, someone who's obviously not white, and someone who is light skinned, as far as like the shades of Colombians that can come in. So like I'm darker than Danny, obviously. You know, Danny's, you know, so it's like from your spectrum, has that ever affected your life? Like, do you ever look at yourself in the mirror and like, you know, stuff like, you know, kind of like that?
Gosh, yeah. And if you saw our family, we have so many different shades, which is so funny. Some of our closest cousins are either blonde and blue eyed, so people always question that. But I personally have people can care. My mom and my dad had a very tough time. My mom had a very tough time when she worked at a bank. People would tell her, like, can you speak with a better accent? Like, I don't understand you. Or they would treat her stupid. Um, then my dad is darker than me, and he would feel it a lot more. And he would say that when he first moved to this company, that he just felt secluded. And my dad, if you ever met him, he's very outgoing.
Oh
He's
yeah.
not one to ever get that. So I just felt like that was very interesting. Um, but no, I don't think I have, especially growing up in Florida, but definitely living in DC. It was very highlighted, like, oh, you are Hispanic. Like, what type of Hispanic are you? And it was always like people be like, oh, where are you from? And if I
Yeah.
didn't feel like answering, and I'm like, oh, I'm American. Where are you from? What
Yeah.
part of America are you from? Just
That's
being
it.
Yeah, it's a
sassy,
good
depending on
Americanized
how
accent. I
yeah,
like that.
depending on how they ask.
Wow.
So,
So that kind
but
of
yeah,
goes hand in hand, though. But you do some form of code switching, like where it's kind of like, for me, I know myself, like if I get in a group of like, because where I grew up, once I left, it's just we're in Newport News, we're near
mm-hmm,
Hampton, so it's like we're, and basically just a poor, very part of town, a lot of black people, your first inclusion that. So like for me, like a lot of it, the way I naturally kind of grew up was learning how to go from an American accent,
mm-hmm.
or going to like like a straight up like what's up, like. So is that something, and do you think that's something that inherently happens whether we want to or not? Like we're not consciously going,
Hmm.
oh, like it's just something, like, do you think that's something like that's just something we learn, right? Is that something that just like our brains as young children kind of like someone goes, here's the cookie, and you
I,
go, what's up, homie, how to
Yeah,
freestyle, like.
I think it's very environment like. So I think as humans we always try to assimilate to our environment.
Mhm.
So for sure, now being older, I feel like I speak more professionally and like more put together. Or even living in DC, I felt like I had to really polish the way I spoke.
Yeah.
Versus hanging out with friends, definitely being like, "Hey, bro, what's up? How you doing?" and being more chill and relaxed.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think it just depends really on the environment that you grew up in. So being in middle school, I definitely dressed completely different.
Yeah.
I was very into hip hop. I wore the big hoop earrings. I
Sick.
did the scruffy hair.
Yeah. The deep eyeliner.
Unrecognizable.
Yeah, I feel you, bro.
yeah. That's funny. Well.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. I look at her now. I'm like, she, she was trying to figure out her life.
It's a
But
canon
yeah,
event.
Yeah.
Very cool. Ask a question there.
No. Well, I was going to ask like, yeah. Do you ever like find yourself? I guess not really. Do you ever? Because I'm sure you have. I think the real question is Spanglish. Like, is there?
mm,
Do you feel like there's like a correct and an incorrect way of doing it? Because as far as I'm concerned, I
mm,
find it incorrect when I give my mom a question and then she says, "Okay," but like it's not like the answer I want. It's so difficult when like they're like English second learners
mm.
and everything. So how is that for you when you like are doing the Spanglish with your mom or your dad, even, given that like you already know both languages and they know both languages too, but of course, you know, the next generation's usually better at speaking both dialects than the one before.
Yeah. So Spanglish has become, I think it's going to become a new language, really. But I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way of saying it. It's more of, for example, I actually feel more comfortable now speaking in English than if I were to do the interview in Spanish, just because I've lived here so long and that's
Really?
become my primary language. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so
Even,
too.
even to the point that, yeah, and then if I am explaining something to my mom or my dad, I feel grateful that they know English. So I'm always like, I'll say something and I'm like, do you understand what I'm trying to say? And they're like, okay, yeah, yeah, I get it. So
Yeah.
I don't think there's a wrong or right way of speaking Spanglish. It's just knowing the person that you're talking to, and to again, to like your environment and feeling that they could understand how you're trying to come across.
That's
Or
very
there's some
wise.
words that,
Yeah.
yeah, there's some words that don't translate. So then you
Yeah.
have to speak Spanglish. So
Nice.
Exactly. I wonder what it's like. I guess then speaking English, and not only like I guess in the States, but also in Washington D.C. out of all places, because I imagine like it could feel a little like politically tense around
oh my
there. And I
gosh,
guess I just want to
so
ask
much.
that is that how since you've moved there relatively recently, not too long ago, right? Like almost like what?
Um, so a year and a half ago,
Yeah.
officially to DC, but I was looking around the DMV area. I actually was in Baltimore for a little bit to see if
Right.
that was an area that I wanted to live in. So the DMV is like DC, Maryland, and Virginia because they're so close. It's not like Florida or California. They're so long. Like you can go from state to state in
Sure.
less
Yeah. It's
than an
very
hour
easy to
or
travel.
20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was looking at that whole area. Well, wait, what was your question?
My
Yeah,
question.
bro. What
Yeah,
question
well,
were you
well,
gonna
well,
ask
no,
him
no, no,
about?
no, no.
I'm
What I was
full
gonna,
enough of this,
I'm
bro.
what I
sorry.
was
That's
gonna,
crazy.
what I was gonna ask is, how has like living in DC like made
Oh,
you a little more
yes.
aware of your surroundings? Because it's like you're trying to assimilate.
Yes.
She
Like,
just
are you
she
more?
told us that earlier.
I understand that, but I didn't get to the question part. Well, the
No,
question is,
I'm glad you're asking that
yeah, like are you
because
reading
it's
the
different.
news more? Do you have to like stay up with like
Oh
politics in
God.
order to hold a conversation? Like, I
A
can't
little
imagine.
bit, yeah. So I picked a very particular building. Like I picked an expensive building to say the least. But I did that with a reason because I wanted the full DC experience. But with that being said, I felt like I had to impersonate like a different character. So even when I worked from home, I'm like, I'm gonna put the news on because I'm in DC, so I have to feel like an intellectual, and it's like I have to keep
Yeah.
up with conversation. Um, but yeah, being in DC was very different than different being in Miami. They try to be very politically correct, which can come off as I'm like, are they being fake? Like, so I was trying to navigate those waters to see if they were really interested in talking to me or they're just being friendly, but
Right.
I don't know. So very different climate, very different culture.
Yeah, Florida's a whole
Um,
different world, man. Like,
it really
it's a
is.
whole different world compared to the East Coast because you're so close to New York, and New York's whole vibe is everybody get out of my way. I don't,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, it's not like, and so that stuff
Yeah.
kind of like bleeds down. Baltimore's tough. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
it's
It's
tough.
like
It's
you
I
tough.
don't
can only imagine.
you
Yeah.
don't go into Baltimore. You know what I'm saying? In like certain places because it's like a
Yeah.
rough
Mhm.
city. And like
Yeah.
certain parts of DC, like they're politically nice, but there are bad parts of DC, bro. Like there are parts of DC
Very.
that the people that are walking around trying to pretend to be intellectuals, they don't go to. Like, and it's less
Mhm.
than a bus ride away, and
Do
so it's like,
is that pretty accurate, Kata? Do you find there's like some dodgy areas of DC you try to stay away from?
Yeah. So even where I lived is called Navy Yard, and that was gentrified apparently for the past 4 years. And literally, if you Navy Yard has become a very expensive place to live. Not even a block, a block. It's like completely different.
mm-hmm.
There's housing there's very low income housing. There's housing for the homeless. There's actually homeless pretty much everywhere that you go. So yeah, it's kind of block by block. You'll either be in a very high income driven or very low income, and then it's gotten to the point that yeah, now they're gentrifying because they can.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
it's bananas.
That's insane.
All right, time for my question.
Yeah. Yeah. Go
So
for it.
when I moved out here, one of the things that I like started to learn about and like study more about was like kind of like Chicano pride, Mexican pride, just in generally being Latino. And like one of the things that always came up when I had conversations with a friend of mine in Arizona, who was 100% Mexican, 100% Indian. You could look at it in his face. He was native as native comes. And he always harbored like, there was always like, that wasn't like his whole focus. Like, sometimes you meet those weirdos who get really mad because they got circumcised or something horrible. Like, they're like, my mom, jacked me up. And like, he wasn't that crazy about it. Like, but it was like something that I remember him bringing up and always stuck with me is like, he really didn't like Spain and he didn't like the conquistadores, and he didn't like what happened to his family and to his tribes and everything like that. Do you ever think about that? Does that ever, I don't know, like, his cousin kind of said the same thing, which I was like, I get it, like, but what do you ever, does that ever cross your mind? Do you ever, I don't know.
I think, growing up, especially around middle school, high school, that's when you're trying to figure yourself out. So obviously, I would hear a lot of people give me their perception, and I remember some of the things that growing in middle school, they would always say like, that's such a white people thing, that's such a white people thing to do. And it was always like, when we were hanging around Hispanic and even Black people, it was like, you always would put that down. And so I feel like it was a mindset that it was like, well, we're trying to be different from them, or like, we're being oppressed by them. And me coming from Colombia, it was not something that I ever thought about. It was not something that I ever thought about, literally being fresh off coming from Colombia. And then I think then growing up, I started to see a lot of differences. But then being in D.C., I started to hang out. Actually, I didn't realize I had so many Hispanic friends until I started to bring them up to D.C. and all my American friends and white friends would be like, you have a lot of Hispanic friends. I'm like, oh, I guess I do. I never really put two and two together. Those are who my friends are. That's who I relate to, right?
It's just normal for you.
It was just normal, yeah. So, and then I was like, okay. So a lot of the things this whole like, oh, that's a white people thing to do, I would never be able to say that around my American friends. It just sounds like I'm putting them down. And I would not feel comfortable doing that, because there were a lot of them, we were neighbors, and they were so friendly to me, and it was like, well, why would we say, like, I don't know, it was like, I don't want to have that mindset of judging someone for whatever reason. And so I think I've enjoyed living in different situations and hanging out with different communities, just because everyone has such different perspectives. So
sure.
That whole conquistador thing, like, I feel like it's an amazing part of history. And even living in DC, I absolutely love history and like learning. I don't know if you go to the African American History Museum, and even the American History Museum has a specific section for the Hispanic community, just because now we're part of America, and actually
we're becoming a majority, really.
We're going to become the majority sooner or later. I have one of my really good friends. She has a marketing agency that's directed just for Americans trying to market to Hispanic populations, and she has a podcast called Spanglish, which is so funny.
Interesting.
We should talk to her.
I can definitely. I was like,
sick.
okay, I can connect you guys.
That'd be a good connect. But that's
because she has a lot of insights of how this demographic is now changing, and how even now Americans are seeing the economic difference that the Hispanic populations are now creating and generating, and now they want to market to Hispanic populations. So I try to, at least from what I've learned, is like, I always try to get like the best out of someone. So I've never, I do get where people have said, like, okay, like, oh, they. But
you don't like sit at home and you're like, oh, hey, Simon Bolivar, I'm gonna beat you up. Like, if I, you're not like, if I had a time machine, I'd go back in time and beat up Simon Bolivar or anything like that. Like, you wouldn't like hold it against.
No. Yeah. I don't think I would. Who am I to say that I'm wrong? Like, who am I to say that he was wrong? And
for sure.
I think it just would have changed like history.
Simon Bolivar.
Well, I'm not saying he's like Hitler, but I mean, I'm just, from the way he always explained it to me, and the way I feel about it was that it was just like, those people in the way that the Native Americans feel about the white man. That's what I'm talking about. But then almost in that same, it's almost like when the Irish, it's not like, that's a whole different thing. Like when Irish are like, we're just as bad as slaves. And it's like, well, relax, Holmes. Like, that's crazy. It's like, but it is almost within the same context. We were just on different continents. I mean, people came to us and ran through our lands, destroyed our women and children. Like, they did the same thing as the Native Americans did. We just don't think about it that way because why? Right? That's the question. Yeah. That's why I ask these questions. Why doesn't the average, you know, why aren't I more driven by this? Why aren't you? Why isn't there more of like a?
Why isn't there more of a conversation about it?
Why isn't there more conversation amongst Colombian people themselves? It's like the Native Americans got casinos. Like, what did indigenous people get for us? Like, what is the question? You know, that's my question. I guess that's what the chaotic root of it all for me is, as far as that question is concerned. Is like,
it's
but
good
these
to
are
even talk
important
about
questions to have.
Yeah.
And even like, you know, right now what's happening in Hawaii, and it's like this was not their land to begin with, and then I could feel like I'm like angry for them because I'm like, you took away
isn't that
their
crazy?
land.
You'll feel angry for the Hawaiians, but the meantime, it's like, bro, like, you know, like generations, people, families, worlds. Like when conquistador, you look up the word of conquistador, it's like they conquered.
Yeah.
Conquered. Ran through and conquered. So I don't know. It's a cool question.
It's so much nuance to peel
it
through.
Is.
It's so much nuance to peel through. I wanted to ask regarding the perspective. I think that I guess I get wasps. You know, like white Anglo-Saxon people and all that. Like, how do you feel like their usage of like understanding us has like evolved? Being that lately there's been like controversy, I think, in my side respectively about Latinx. Like is that something that they should really be?
Yeah.
Because like on one hand, I understand. I don't necessarily like that a lot of the time in the Spanish language, though our parents are totally cool with it, that like Latinos and masculine sounding words always take the precedence over female sounding words, because that's kind of like alluding that men are always going to be like ruling over women in Latin countries. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know, Latinx just sounds like not it. You know what I mean? So how do you feel about that whole thing being like both, you know, Colombian and a woman, of course, in today's society?
Living in D.C. because they're so progressive. So like, do you walk around sometimes and see like Latinx posters? Like, you know how you can walk around in LA or like London or something?
I hate that word. I actually hate
I don't like
word.
it either.
Okay,
but like,
she hates it. Okay.
Yeah, so why do you feel like that?
I just feel like I'm being put into another box. So it's like you're taking me from one box to the other.
Yeah.
And then now, I hate being labeled, because even myself, like, I'm still trying to figure out who I am. And it's like, well, now I got to put myself in this box and then this box. And it's like, well, why can't I just be all boxes or no boxes? Or so that's very interesting. And in DC, it's kind of like, it's a little too much. It can be very in your face. Like, it's like, well, what do you identify? It has to be A, B, or C.
Right.
And sometimes I just don't really want to talk about it. I just want to be Catalina and not have to identify as anything, but I just want to have fun and not talk about politics all the time. And talk about how I want you to talk to me and like call me by whatever. Like some people say, like, do you want me to call you Catalina or Catalina? And I'm like, as long as you're not calling me
late for dinner,
Marie. Even more.
Hey, you get it, bro. I'm sorry, Danny.
No, well, yeah, but I mean, it's definitely weird that like the government that we live in, for all the talk about like, oh, we're in like a mixing pot and everything, it's like they do still try to like put us in proverbial and maybe sometimes literal cages. You know, it's just like I don't like it. I kind of just wish, like, if there was a movie done about Colombians, by Colombians, for Colombians, that could even be better than Encanto, because I loved Encanto. It would be like about us going to space, but it doesn't make mention about like, oh, you know, don't take any cocaine up there, or like don't forget to drink your coffee beans, or take your lucky emerald or whatever.
Thing.
You know?
I always get like, one thing that I will say that it bothers me is when people always say like, oh, like, you're Colombian and you live in a nice building, like, does that mean that you're a cocaine
see?
drug dealer?
Because that was, Danny, hey, you know what, bro? That was a wonderful way to lead into that question, because Danny knew I was going to, sorry, I didn't mean to leave you with a bump. Danny knew that was my next question, you know. His other
that
part of the whole thing
me.
is just the fascination with how Colombians are portrayed in media, and he just doesn't like it and he hates it a lot.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny because people like Narcos from Netflix, and I absolutely hate that show.
You don't like that show yourself?
You don't like that show?
That's
you don't
so
like that
interesting.
Show? Why do you like that show? Yeah, that's great.
So what? Why not? Why not exactly?
Okay, so there's actually a Pablo Escobar movie that was made with Colombians by Colombians, and it was actually history bits, and you'll actually see like bits and pieces that were taken from the media. Like it's kind of like a history lesson, but it was very well made.
Sure.
I really like that one, of course, so I'm biased. But hearing Narcos, it's very like it was not made by Colombians. It was made by Americans trying to portray what Colombia is. So
yeah, I mean, even the lead actor is Brazilian. You
that
have to learn Spanish.
that I hate that. I
Yeah.
literally want to like punch somebody in the throat because it's like he's speaking with a Brazilian accent, and I can tell that you are Brazilian. You're not even Colombian, so I automatically turn it off in my head, and I'm like, I hate it. I absolutely
You
hate
can't
it.
suspend your disbelief because it's supposed to be based on a true story. But what worth is that true story if it's like being heightened for the sake of suspense and for storytelling, which is fine, it's fair, but then just don't call it based on a true story. Call it like a super duper, highly ridiculous exaggeration of something that honestly was pretty annoying and depressing for other Colombians to know that they were associated with, you know? And it's just like it romanticized the whole thing.
Yes. And so my aunt was a coronel in Colombia. So I actually even to one point, I remember being in middle school and be like, oh, Pablo Escobar is cool because it was romanticized. And it was like, look at all the money. He made billions, like billions. So it is very romanticized. But
I'm sorry, what year did you come over again?
2001.
What year were you born?
93.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. So, wow. Even at 9 years old, in that day and age, yeah, that's interesting. That's crazy.
It was talked about, yeah. And so there is that one Pablo Escobar, like, kind of like movie that Colombia made, and that's kind of how I got some history. But even talking to my aunt again, that was in the Colombian force, and she was the one that told me, she's like, no, Pablo Escobar is not good because he would kill his own people, and he would take police officers and he would kill them on the street because he was egotistic. And so it's this Robin Hood story, so they only tell you one side. So I thought it's very interesting. And if you ever go to Medellin, and so there's a lot of controversy around that topic. But I do hate it because the one thing I hate is when people tell me like, oh, like you're a drug dealer. And I always say, I'm like, okay, we produce it, you consume it. So at the end of the day, like, it's kind of my way of saying, like, the only reason it exists is because Americans are the ones that are buying it and using it. If you meet most
exactly.
It's actually looked down upon. It's very looked down upon to use any drugs to begin with. So versus here in the States, if you go anywhere, like even lawyers, like very high professional people are the ones that are using this. So I could go on and on.
It's very bizarre, that whole thing. It's like it used to be so cool, I guess, because like, oh, it's a party drug and everybody's doing it. But I've been to like a couple of Hollywood parties in my time here in LA, as hacky as that sounds. The seriousness of DC versus the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. But one thing I've gleaned from that is that people, if they catch you doing cocaine, they definitely have like a different perspective of you. Not me personally, but other friends I know who have seen or maybe have been seen, interacting with such substances, it kind of can leave a dent on your reputation. And I definitely wouldn't doubt that to be the case with our own people. Like, I mean, my parents, they're like saints, they wouldn't even touch like a joint, if it wasn't like in a plastic bag first. So it's like, it's definitely got its like weird stigma. And I think it's only because Americans just aren't or not Americans, people from the United States. We're Americans too, because Colombia isn't South America.
South America.
We are Americans, somos americanos.
We are.
But like people in the U.S. that are just like of our the state's mentality, their whole thing is like, oh, you guys provide the party. No, we provide like cool things like bananas and tourism and music and art. A lot of people don't even know about Botero, and he's like the greatest living artist or dead artist. He was cool. He made being like large and portly and You know, he promoted body positivity before it was cool. So it's just like all these things, and I just wish there were more things. I almost wish there were more things that people acted racist against to Colombians that weren't just cocaine. You know, like make fun of us for our mountains, make fun of us for our donkeys, don't make fun of us for a little powder that goes away in a matter of seconds. You know, like it's.
Yeah, I agree. It's very tough.
Well, you know what? My next question. What's your favorite Colombian food? What's the food that always makes you, you know, you're on a, you know, it's like 3 months into your relationship and they're like, hey, babe, like make me something that, you know, make me something that your grandma used to make. And you'd be like, yeah, let me whip up blank.
Bandeja paisa, but I don't think anyone can make it. I have to go to a Colombian restaurant for sure. Colombia, bandeja paisa is like the love of my life. It'll always make me happy, even though it's probably not good for me, but it's good for my soul.
Yeah, bro.
There's a certain level of preparation with that. It always comes in the hot, and all the food just looks like it's been well cooked throughout the day. So it's it's insane.
There's a lot to put together. Yeah, I don't know of anyone that can make.
I could whip up one of them mamma jammas.
Okay.
I'll find a way to get into Chinatown, bro. I'll get all the meats. But we're close enough to Mexico. I can whip up a bandeja like it's nobody's problem.
I haven't seen him do that yet. So
I'll whip it up, bro. Don't even jest,
I'll test the
homie.
first round of it.
Yeah. Ask your next
We
question.
touched a bit into it, but I wanted to kind of go into more depth about being a female and being Latin. No, because
I'm sorry. I'm joking. I'm sorry. Can we retake that?
This is important.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say it, but I'm saying I apologize. I shouldn't. This is my podcast.
Well, it's our podcast.
Oh, that's sweet. Thanks, babe.
Yeah.
Let's do this one more time. Here we go. Clean.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is like I feel like it's better nowadays, but I think I felt always like kind of this weird guilt. There's always this guilt, not only being Catholic, but also just being, you know, an ABC, an American-born Colombian, and not to borrow from the Chinese, but yeah, you know, like just that, and just seeing my mom, like, you know, she's wonderful, she's sweet, but she wasn't like having a consistent career because she was taking care of my brother and my sister and me and the rest of the family sometimes while my dad was having a job. And I always kind of wish like, oh, my mom should have a job. Why doesn't she have a job? And she's happy and my dad's happy and they're both happy and they're both living, but she still doesn't have a job. Whereas like this next generation that's coming up, not only you, but I just see cousins of everywhere, just like both genders, both genders, both coasts, everywhere, just looking for jobs, you know, and just like wanting to like make their own life and move out, whether it's out of Florida to D.C. or to Baltimore, like my brother, or me to the west, or even my sister, she was in Spain for a bit, like. So I guess what I wanted to ask, a roundabout way of saying it, but like how do you think like the female, how do you feel like you've been able to like capture your essence without having to succumb to like subservience that unfortunately Latin culture is always like kind of pushed indirectly?
And wait, hold on. And do you think it would be the same if you had been raised in Colombia for the rest of your life? Do you think you would still be in the same position if you had never immigrated over here?
Yeah, take your time. This is a heavy
it's a heavy one.
I think it really depends on your family. So actually, my mom and my dad were never like, oh, you're going to be a stay-at-home wife. And actually it was pushed the other way around. Very young, my dad would travel a lot to the United States, and he would always bring me back stuff from the United States or wherever he would travel. He would travel to Aruba, like, he did international business, and I think that's where I got it from. And he would tell me all the time, he's like, I can't wait for you to start working for a multinational. Like, that's a very Colombian thing. Like, you go to a career and you want to work for a multinational. So I came from a family that was never like, I was never expected to be a stay-at-home wife.
That's good.
And like I said, I have a lot of my role models are my my great grandma was a nurse, and one of my closest aunts, she was I forgot the name now, in the army in Colombia. So it's kind of like
she was like a Rambo.
She really was. Yeah. Like she's the cutest thing ever. but that's where she gets you because you're like, oh, she's
Yeah,
so cute,
yeah.
and then she's like, bam,
Bam, gotcha.
don't try me.
And got your wallet
Exactly.
and your shoes.
So then that's good because that means like Colombians in general, like from your perspective, at least they've been pushing the agenda that women should be treated equally. Then
I think so.
Yeah.
I really do. I think coming from being raised in Colombia, and then even looking back at like some of my cousins that are still there, they all hold very professional jobs. Like they were not. I don't think they're expected to work. I mean, to stay at home. But I will say this because it's interesting that you say that. I think if you would have asked me this question 10 years ago, I would have said that I would never want to be a stay-at-home mom, and that's, not for anything. I would say like that's something lazy. I'm not gonna lie, like I thought that. Now being older and seeing how much a mom does, I'm like, fuck, that's a full-time job.
Yeah.
You get paid nothing.
Yeah.
It's so much work. You give so much of yourself that you don't realize that being a stay-at-home mom is actually a lot harder than I think going to a career and going to a job because you're actually getting paid.
Yeah.
So it's like, and you don't have to deal. It's like, oh, I'm done with my career and I get to close it and I get to go home. Being a stay-at-home mom, I think it's a lot harder because you don't get to go anywhere else. You deal with the BS that you have to deal with every single day, and you put a smile, and that's it. No one pays you, and people think it's easy. So I now have a very different perspective than I did 10 years ago.
Hell yeah,
So.
brother. That's
That's
awesome.
interesting. Yeah.
Hey, see? Cut your mom some slack, bro. That was a
no,
full-time
yeah, I know.
a full-time job, bro. She couldn't go out and pursue her career in fucking carpentry.
She raised me
because
that's,
she raised y'all,
that's
bro.
What it is. It's just,
I know. I was
He'd be like, my mama never did nothing. I'd be like, bro, look at you. You literally don't have to tie your shoes, bro.
I mean, you remember.
That's
my mom was a
okay.
tattoo artist. She was like a temporary tattoo
I
artist.
had no idea.
You didn't know
Oh,
about that?
yeah, she did. Because I actually worked with your mom for a little bit.
How I thought you would remember. Yeah, the temporary tattoo arting at Fun Spot in Orlando. Yeah,
and the
airbrushing
of the hair.
Yeah, and the braiding as well. Yeah, she would do that. She would do that.
Yeah, Danny, trying to hate on your mom like that, and then
no, I'm not trying to hate on my mom. I think I just like I want the best.
Here's
for
my
people.
next question because
yeah, I got a heavy question.
Are you going down the list or are you winging this?
No, I mean
you didn't show me the list beforehand.
Well, I sent you the list in your phone.
No.
Yeah, I got one about religion in just a moment, but why don't you go ahead and go next?
Yeah, my question is,
that's fun.
Do you think if you were to have children, if you're not gonna have children, I guess then it doesn't matter. But in a situation where you had children, or like a dog that you liked, or whatever. How much Colombianism is gonna be in your house? Like how much?
A lot.
Yeah, you're very right. You know, like
that was one
okay.
of the questions.
Was it?
Yeah,
because that was my question last time. That's why you're gonna have see, I'm just so jealous. Like my cousin pardon me, my cousin grew up like that, like and they had like and they had everything. They had all the stuff,
what,
and it was like
they had music
all the time, and it was everything, and it was like a good time, and and so it's like it's so cool.
You can still have that.
You got to.
You can still have that.
Yeah, you have to.
I guess maybe a quicker way of answering that is just like, what is one thing that you're so excited to pass down, whether it's to your brother or to your eventual children or whoever that you feel like you can be a role model for? What's one thing you think you could pass down from Colombian culture that's like the best thing ever, if you could choose one?
Oh, that is sick, bro. Good one, dog.
I'll just repurpose your question.
I think
she's
from
like cocaine, bro, with fucking all. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
You're steamrolling.
We're being serious. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But that's actually a very Colombian thing, like having that charisma, having that like let's just have fun, like let's not make everything so.
I'm so sorry.
That explains why I'm not that. Yeah, but I mean.
No, I think.
Yeah.
I think most Colombians are very embracing, and like a lot of people that have traveled to Colombia, they always say they're like, I have loved going there, and not even coming from a Colombian. It's like no, it's like one of the nicest people that they're very caring, like how can I help you, and the way that they speak, it's like actually Spaniards are very like harsh
Yeah.
And Colombians, the way they speak is like, mi amor, ¿cómo te ayudo? Like it's very sweet. It's like it's very embracing. So I really enjoy that. I enjoy actually when I go there, I feel at home, and I know that a lot of expats or people that go and travel, and that's why I think I'm like, if you go to Colombia, I feel like you would love it.
Right.
Even for a few months, like going to Medellin, and I took some friends. Actually, no, I took my cousin to Medellin at one point, and we did a hostel. And she's like, "I will never go to a
Oh,
hostel."
you went
I'm
to a
like, "No,
hostel? Oh my God.
I did. It's called Selena. That's the only one I would ever recommend."
Okay.
And she was like, "There's so many people from around the world. Like they were from Australia, and they were from like there were a lot of Europeans backpacking through Colombia." And she was very surprised. And they were like, "Yeah, like we absolutely love Colombia because one, they took the stigma away that it was such a dangerous city, and it's like, oh no, like danger could be anywhere. You just have to know where you're going. And two, the food is amazing. Everything is fresh. You can have fresh juice from anywhere. Like it's actually fresh lemonade, fresh passion fruit. Like everything is just natural. There's no such thing as organic. It just comes organic.
It just is what it is.
Like,
you don't have to like put a label on it. You don't have to
no,
put it
it's
in a box.
lovely.
Yeah.
No, it's lovely. So I always said that I wanted to have a house there so I can always bring my kids and so they can see where did I come from and why I am the way that I am. So I would never want to lose that. I love that side.
That's a beautiful answer.
Very
I
cool.
got to go ahead and ask. In addition to that, I guess getting back to the hard hitting questions, because that was very
She said,
wonderful. That was very sweet. But like, I think this next one kind of takes a look at ourselves, you know, and I don't know how to feel about it, so I'm just gonna ask you.
Sure.
Do you feel like the teachings of being like a Catholic and a Roman Catholic of that? Did they really assimilate well into what it meant to like, you know, grow up with a Colombian family with like proper Latino or Latina values, or did you feel like maybe like I did, where it's like I don't like how it makes me feel because it makes me feel like I don't have any individuality, you know. Whereas if I'm Colombian, like okay, that's better,
Yeah.
but Catholicism, it's like strict, you know. It's
Catholicism.
like okay.
Super strong.
We're from the East Coast,
My
okay,
bad,
so
my
we
bad.
speak a little different.
Catholicism? That's a sick
Is it
one.
Catholicism or a Catholicism for you?
I think it's Catholicism, but
Catholicism?
That's all. I've always pronounced it like that. Anyway,
Alright.
how do you feel about that and how it's kind of like shaped your family versus how it shaped you?
it's a very tough conversation. I actually had a conversation about this with my mom earlier.
Sick.
I could go on and on about this, but I enjoyed growing up Catholic because that's all I ever knew. So then moving away in the United States, my mom then decided to become Christian, even though Catholics are Christian. But
Really?
it's a whole like
No
cultural
way,
thing. Yeah.
bro.
There's a big difference,
So she
apparently.
stopped being Catholic. You
Catholic,
almost got me,
yeah.
bro. She almost stopped. She stopped being Catholic.
Catholic.
Catholical.
Well, but she didn't feel it like it was like that. She just felt like she just wanted more community based.
Yeah.
But then it was very looked down upon from both my mom's side and my dad's side, and they're like, I can't believe she's turning away, and I'm like, it's the same Christian concept. Like you believe in Christ, it should be the same thing. But no, there are huge cultural differences within these religions. It's very interesting, and I think even I have had the privilege to travel to different countries, Muslim countries, and what I started to realize is like, oh my gosh, we're more alike than we are different. What anybody believes is mostly because that's where their environment has taught them. And so it's such a difficult conversation because every time I talk to my family that I'm very Catholic, I've learned to be like, okay, that's what you believe and that's okay. That's not what I believe, and that's okay. And I don't want to force my beliefs on you, but just don't force your beliefs on me.
That's how it should be.
Which is crazy
That's how it should
to be
be.
having a conversation with someone about the same dude. It's like, dude, my Jesus can lift so much more than your Jesus. It's like, no way, bro. Like, Catholic Jesus, he's ripped.
Yeah, I mean.
But, okay, final 2 minutes. Give her your final question because we gotta wrap this up.
Yeah. Well, I guess really my final question is like, what
Encanto?
are you hoping? We can talk about Encanto very briefly.
Don't worry,
but
I'll use my question for that.
you use your question for Encanto. What I want to use my question for is like, what do you kind of hope that more people in the future, let's say 5-10 years from now, they embrace more about Colombia besides like, oh, you've got such as singers such as like Shakira, and you've got Carol G and all that, and they're great singers, but like, are they going to get into older Colombian music, and could we get into Colombian film like we have with Asian filmmaking within the past couple of decades? Like, what's your hopes for United States and the rest of the world that they can absorb from Colombia in the future, do you think?
I think that if they gave themselves the opportunity to visit Colombia more than anything, they would get a very authentic feeling more than me just telling them, just because I've lived here longer, so I feel like I'm a little bit out of touch with being very Colombian. But I feel like they should also understand maybe just the history of, again, going back to like the whole Pablo Escobar thing and just realizing that we're so much more than that. But
yeah,
we're gonna have to want.
We really are. There's such a spectrum. You were mentioning London, and I just really quickly wanted to bring this up. I was there for 2 days after we got back for our cruise to visit a pen pal of mine. Pen pal I've known for 10 years, and afterwards I went to a dinner just by myself, a dinner for one, in an abandoned tube. But the head chef herself was Colombian, and she made a 5-course meal where the first dish was just arepas. It was miniature arepas. And it felt so nice. It was like a full circle moment for me, because I used to hate arepas. I really did. But I eventually, my brother, he got me into them, my mom and my aunt from my mom's side. So it's just like, it's almost like you have to lead with less judgment and more curiosity, because believe it or not, like the values of Colombia and any other nation, really, it kind of just bleeds and it blends and it like fuses with each other. And I think that's what's exciting about traveling, because then it's like you get to know how much more, like you said, how much more alike than we are different with people from around the world, whether it's a foot or a mile away or a world away, I guess.
Yeah.
My question, how was London? Obs, how long did you stay in London?
6 months.
Okay. Were there a lot of Colombians in London?
So very similar to here, I think. There were sections that were very like, this is Colombia. There's a lot of Colombians and Dominicans. So
no way, bro. Really? In England?
Yeah.
In London? For real?
Oh my God.
Sick,
yes.
bro. We have to go.
Oh yeah, I love London.
That's fire, bro. Why didn't you go to any of that stuff?
I was only there for 2 days. She was there for 6
you're
months?
Right, 6 months, yeah. Well, okay, that's cool. But so then everybody gets together and there's like Colombian restaurants. Do they speak Spanish? Does it have a
like a British
Does it have a
to
British lilt to it?
Yeah, they do.
I would die.
Weird.
I would die. That'd be the most fire thing to hear. Hola.
So
now see, I can't even, because then it sounds
Do you
like
think you can do an impression of that?
Yeah,
Catalina?
can you do an impression of that first, please?
Absolutely not.
Please,
Absolutely
please.
No,
I'll do mine.
I don't have the
I'll do mine.
accent.
I'll do
okay,
mine.
Please do.
Yeah, you tell us if it's accurate or not.
Yeah, you tell me if this is accurate.
Yeah.
Fuck. Hold on.
Just let me ask
because you're everything, right? Because I'm thinking suave, right? Buenas tardes. But then I'm thinking, governor. So it's like, no, but you have to work backwards. You work backwards. You work backwards.
Just play with me. And like, ask me for the directions to like the Big Ben or something. You're an American.
Hi, excuse me. Do you know how I can get to Big Ben?
No hablo español, inglés. Hablo español. So talk to me in Spanish. Just say something.
¿En dónde está Big Ben?
Sí, pues el Big Ben está por
there's
ese lado,
no way that's
cerca
what it
del
sounds
quarry.
like.
No, it kind of. I mean,
no, it sounds like this. El otro día, it sounds like it's la reina de, it sounds like that.
Inglaterra.
Yeah.
Is there something in particular that London Colombians do that you haven't seen anywhere else when they speak it?
Nice question. Yeah, What's that one?
And then
I'll have to Encanto one.
No, they they have a British accent mostly when they speak English. So it's very weird. It's like, why do you have a British accent? But of course, it's like, why do you have an Americanized accent?
That's
when
the
you
most
speak English?
fire, craziest inside out world ever. They'd be like,
just
oh,
another
what's your
example.
fucking deal, mate? Oh, I'm Colombian,
Yes.
mate. I'm from fucking the land of Pablo
You
Escobar,
got it.
mate.
I'm from
You know where I'm
Bogota.
fucking from, mate. I got bricks on me, mate. And it's like, bro, you're fucking Colombian, dog. Like, relax. Like, that's
Yeah.
crazy. That's
Actually,
sick.
that's pretty good. Yeah, and they're like,
See,
bruh,
it's out of that way.
bruh.
So if it's like that, if it's like, oh, mate, so then you speak Spanish like that. Oh, yeah, mate. No, but then you end up like a cholo. You be like, hey, yo, fool. Oh, yeah, wait. Where are you from?
Yeah.
Okay, my final question.
This is pretty important. So we
Danny
need all your
loves
attention.
Encanto. Like,
And
loves
Bryan
Encanto.
hates Encanto.
And I hated Encanto. How did you feel about Encanto?
I didn't love or hate it. I liked
She's like, I
some
didn't even
aspects of
watch
it.
it.
No, I did. I watched it a couple times. I think I really liked that they had like the arepas and like all this stuff. But I personally was like, she didn't look Colombian to me.
Boom.
Oh my god, I'm like,
That's
it's
one
like
for your
I was
boy. That's one for your boy. Your other cousin went for you, man.
I just didn't really. I was like, I don't know who created these characters.
Well, okay, but like to be more specific, you're just talking about like the wardrobe or like the way like her glasses were or something, her hair.
Yeah, I mean,
Do you know how
I
I
guess
felt?
that's my perspective.
Yeah,
I
go
do
ahead,
get
say
it.
it.
Like it's kind of like they're just. I guess no, that's fucked up for me to say, but it's because it's like okay, my family members don't. It didn't relate. Like when I looked at her, I was like, I don't really know any Colombians that look like that. Specifically, her, the main character. Other characters, I was like, yes, like because we do have African American traces, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, I love that you portray that because in Cartagena, you'll see it a lot along the coast, and I was
Yeah.
like, and
A lot of
They're
Afro-Colombians there. Yeah.
Afro Colombians, yeah, and like there's a whole culture within that as well. But yeah, it was very Americanized. It was,
Yeah, I felt like a dude
love-
had gone to Colombia for a week and then came
Yeah.
back to Pixar and was like, bro, there's this place that's south of Mexico where it's kind of like Mexico, but they do a lot of crazy stuff there, like, and they wear these hats that are kind of like
Yeah.
sombreros. But
Well,
they're
fair,
nice,
fair.
like-
But you know what it is that I think what's interesting about the film is that you may have been able to learn as much as you could have in a week, but like I've been there several times for more than a week, and I've never heard about like the whole like Gail, whatever, the guy that did the butterfly poem and everything. Like that was a big motif in the movie.
You didn't know
and
about
apparently
Gabriel
that's-
Garcia Marquez?
Yeah,
fool?
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, but that's
Right.
that's like big thing for Colombia, and like I don't see
Right.
any media covering that at all whenever they talk about Colombia. Not even Bruce Almighty
born
with
with
his
that. You're
freaking
born with that in your
Juan
soul.
Valdez.
Juan Valdez.
Yeah.
That was so funny. Yeah, I mean, I think there's the pros were that it brought Colombia to a new spotlight. It brought it to a lot of, American families and their kids, and I'm sure they have questions about, where is Colombia? And so
That'd be cool.
a lot of little things that I caught, like I was like, this one, the sombrero volteado, or like las arepas, and like I really enjoyed just watch, or the ajiaco. Like I was like, oh my god, this is so cute. Pros and cons, but I don't think you can make everyone happy. So
Well, all I'm saying is, if they had replaced the three things that you've named about the movie that you enjoyed with tacos, sombreros, and that, it would have been a movie about Mexico or another.
That's right.
Like if they had replaced 4 different things out of that thing, it would have been a movie that have.
If they had Daddy Yankee singing the main
yeah,
song instead
if
of
he had been in
Carlos
charge of
Vives.
Lin-Manuel Miranda, like
Yeah.
who, by the way, it's like isn't even Colombian. If like
he's like Cuban or something, isn't he?
he's Puerto Rican or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah. But
We
so
need to-
again,
we need
it's
to
interesting.
travel
Like it's so
more.
funny for us for all as we're about to close this whole thing. It's like we all have our own kind of like our own subtle ways of like. It's like, well, he's not even Puerto Rican. What a weird thing for me to say. Like in the same conversation as being like, hey, yo. Let's hold the conquistadores, accountable for their crime, But and at the same time, I'm going, I can't believe that movie was made by other people who weren't Colombian, and that's like, so it's like, yeah, I don't know.
That's what I'm saying
Isn't that
though. Is
crazy?
that like I think a really nice way of just looking at this that you've revealed to us, and thank you again for being on this, Catalina.
Yeah, thank you for being here with us.
It's better to lead with like some sort of curiosity than like to just be like, oh, that's the way Colombia is. So I'm just gonna take the media there, because then it's like you get to find out about these hostels, you get to find out about these foods, these differences, these different dialect type of speakings. That movie you were talking about, that's like a better representation of Colombia than
Of Pablo.
of Pablo. What did you remember the name of it by any chance? Do you know what it was called? The one that you
I think it's just called La Historia de Pablo Escobar. I think it doesn't glorify. It just tells a story with true bits. Like it actually shows like true bits of what happened.
Yeah, like a Civil War documentary.
That's
Is
what I'm
what's his
saying.
name.
Yeah, history is fun,
cool.
you know, and
You're
who
fun.
Else, who else to say that?
And it was fun to speak with you.
Yeah.
It was so fun speaking with you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much for being on the show.
Really appreciate it.
Do you have any website or something that you'd like to plug, or like let anybody know, or like is there anything at all? Do you want to holler out at someone else? Because here's my guess. This is how I think it's gonna happen, right? Here's what's gonna happen. Like you're gonna slowly go down the list of your cousins, and they're gonna hit up the group chats and go, "Hey yo, I was on Danny's little thing," and then the whole family is gonna start spreading this shit around because they're gonna go, "Oh well, I want to see what she talks about para chismear." You know, they're gonna para hacer porque son chismosas, son chismosas. Entonces quieren chismosear, and they want to go, "Okay, mira, comadre, watch, mira, look at fucking what she said, bro."
I can see your dad like rewatching this.
Is there anything that you want to shout out? Are there any final words as a Colombian that you want to shout out? Is there anything you'd like to do or say or whatever? Plug.
I just want to say that the Colombian girls at the World Cup did amazing and always make us feel proud.
We have our colors on.
I know. Yeah, and Colombians are badasses, so
hell yeah,
everyone should go visit at least one.
And marry a Colombian person. Go out and just love the nearest Colombian person that you know, bro. You ain't got to be with them forever. Just give them a little love. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. If you go out with a Colombian, you're probably going to fall in love with them. That's the problem.
Dangerous words from dangerous ladies. That's what I like to hear. Danny, where can they find you, bro?
Yeah, you can just find me on Instagram at Archilla. I have the magazine out, and we are going to be uploading clips on Caldo de Risa soon. So, I'll be looking out for that in the next month. We're getting our marbles together. This was a wonderful podcast on the Binge on This Channel network.
Yeah, you can find us at the website, bingeonthischannel.com. You can also find me at @thereal_Bryan TV. Anything other than that, Danny and I like to close the show with one more question before you go. Is there a slogan or something that your family says? Is there
un dicho, like a mantra or something?
Perfect, bro. Yeah, bro. Remember the early episodes when you used to come in and be like, today we're going to talk about history. Today we're going to talk about dichos. So it was dichos. Is there a dicho that is like, your family is always like,
Oh, God. I can't believe you put me on the spot. And my dad's going to hate me for this.
Because he says them all the time. He's like,
La vaca no tiene piernas
si no aguanta la lluvia.
Oh, God. I don't know. I can't. I'm sorry. I have to get back to you on that.
Okay, because we have one. We have one.
We like to close our
which
show.
One? Which one? What is it?
The one we like is Al que no le gusta el caldo.
What are you laughing at?
Danny,
what are you laughing at?
You know what? You and I are going to test Danny right now.
No, you don't have to test me on anything.
Danny, you don't know have to close our show?
I do.
All right, you go ahead in front of your cousin.
My family's going to watch this.
I know. Go ahead.
Yeah. Al que no le gusta el caldo se le da 3 tazas.
Have you ever heard that before?
So I got it right.
Yeah?
Yeah, I have. I have along those lines.
Good job, buddy. I'm proud of you.
How do you not know that I know that?
One of the ones is like, no es papaya. Like,
no es
don't put
papaya.
yourself, which is like, don't put yourself in certain situations because you're going to get
That's a good one.
I've never heard that perspective before.
No es papaya.
No es papaya, which is a fruit. But
yeah, which is weird. Yeah.